Hello, how's everybody doing? This one is gonna be on um, Jehovah versus God. Okay. I hope everybody's doing great. Everything is going fine, and I'm having a happy New Year so far. Okay, I'll tell you when it goes south or doesn't go well. I always tell you everything anyway. But today we're going to talk about Jehovah versus God. Now, Jehovah, okay, I got this cookie. It's a vegan cookie. I'm going to try and eat it, but I don't want, I know I'm kind of sloppy, and I don't want to, you know, make it look, I want to make sure the video is all right, so maybe I won't eat it, okay, but maybe I will. But anyway, here we go. Okay, first of all, Jehovah. I'm going to say some things. The thing that I have said for Jehovah is I'm going to say how it has to be said. The second thing I'm going to talk about is it's a code. And then the third thing I'm going to talk about is that it's not equal to anybody else's God, like when we say God or something like that. So now the Jehovah, how I'm going to start this out is my sister. These are two quotes that my sister said. Okay, I have two. My family is all in their tapes. One of my sisters said this to someone. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but they were able to talk to her and go into her house, and she goes, I love my brother, but I love Jehovah more. Okay? So that's one thing. Okay. The other one, I talked to my sister. I don't think she'll ever call me again because my brother passed away. Some of you already know because you went through the tapes, all the tapes. And she said, I'm going to stay with Jehovah. Okay. And how else can I say? So those are two things, but I also want to state that I was a Jehovah's Witness, of course, for people who don't. It's just the first time they'll listen to my videos. I was a Jehovah's Witness. And there was a time, I'm not going to say the story, because it's in my tapes, and a lot of people know, and it's going to be off a little bit. It's not going to be off topic, but it goes along with this topic that I'm talking about right now. One time I was in my brother's house and something happened, and I said Jehovah, and I knew from now, when I look back, that it has nothing to do with God whatsoever. Okay, so that's to start out this thing with this name as far as Jehovah is concerned. Now, what I want to say is that they use the term like Jehovah all the time. It's like constantly. It doesn't change. It's like it has to be used. Like I said, I watched this cartoon, and they said it like maybe 25 times. Someone told me about the cartoon, and they said it like 25 times, and it was like maybe like a 5 minute, 5 minute cartoon, and you know how you say like when you talk about somebody, and then you say okay he. But they don't use he, like the pronoun. Instead of even using a pronoun, they'll say Jehovah. Okay, so that's another thing. So what I'm trying to say is that it's just constantly used, like overused, like just for everything. Like my sister, she told me, she goes, I love my brother, but I love Jehovah more. But it's like, like it can't be what we think of as far as God is concerned. Okay? But anyway, that goes into the other part of my thing. So what I'm trying to say is that it's overused. It's almost like hypnotic, like constantly. I remember when I was Jehovah's Witness and we would use it all the time. but it didn't have the same. I mean, like right now, okay, I know I have friends, everybody believes in God, and we just, take it for granted, but we don't like say it like constantly, like the name over and over again. So that's the first thing I want to say is that it's like a code. It's like, oh, that's going into the next point. So it is like a code, it's like a trigger. And one thing I wanted to say that I was thinking about was that it has to be used. I mean, you can't survive in the religion without saying it. If I was a Jehovah's Witness, I mean, again, I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness now, but if I decided not to use the name, I mean, I would most likely be in trouble. So that's another thing. It's like you have to use the name. You can't not use the name. So that's the number one point that I wanted to say. It's overused. It's constantly used. Even if I said a sentence like, okay, let me see. I really wanted this thing, so I prayed to God. And I know He answered me, okay? But they wouldn't say that. They would go, I wanted this thing, and I prayed to Jehovah, and Jehovah didn't answer me. So it's kind of, what I'm trying to say is overuse. And it's because that's the way that they were taught. That's the way that I was taught. But one thing I wanted to say about my mother when I was growing up, which helped me out a lot. Like I said, some people are in the religion and they know they have to be there. And my mother was one of them. She knew she had to be there. Because one time, she never did that. She never overused it. And I didn't speak about it too much. About saying Jehovah, Jehovah, Jehovah. And she never did that. So I told you I have a lot of things, a lot of tapes as far as talking about growing up with my mother. So if you get a chance, you can look at those. The second point I want to say, I might go back to that point too. It's like I said, it's like a trigger, okay? Because like I told you, I was reading this book on like this. It was a Dean Koontz book, but it has some pretty interesting things in it, as far as when somebody hypnotizes you or gets you to do things. They say things like they have this trigger. It's like a word that it's triggered you to go to this place or something like that. And that's what it seems like to be. I mean, I was there, so I can't really say that. I can't really say that it's not true because I lived through it. And then the third point I want to say is, what was the third point? It's not it's not everybody else's God. It's not everybody else's God. Because I remember I used to go out in service all the time. And like I said, you have this mind blank and you cannot move out of this space. It's impossible. You cannot move out of it. So if you're talking to somebody and they're talking about God, you don't really care. I mean, you don't really care and you don't really listen because they're not saying Jehovah. So if they don't say Jehovah God, no matter what, you're not going to get through. It's like I said, there's a nothing. Now, when I said nothing, I didn't mean anything derogatory. I'm just saying that's part of the training to where it's just nothing there, okay? And there's something else I want to bring up, but I'm not going to bring it up on this one. So I said about the trigger, and then I said, okay, it's not connected to other people's God. Like if I'm out in service and someone says God, I'm not going to really listen. It's not even like not listening. It's like you're in a certain place that you will not leave, okay? And it's good for them because they stay like, that's where the Jehovah Witness and I think the ex-Jehovah Witness get like this focus. It's like a, the strongest focus that no one can break. And if you understand that focus, you can use it for other things. Like I'm saying, it's like the ex-Jehovah Witness pretty much understand better because they left the they left the organization, and they do have things that they learned in the organization, but they can use them for other things. Like for instance, that focus. Like when you're going out in field service and somebody's talking to you about this, I mean, and you're talking. Okay, let me say, you're talking to other people about, Jehovah Witness. There's something else. I'm sorry, I have to express this. On this Jehovah, I'm adding, they call themselves Jehovah Witnesses. So that's another thing, or overuse. So they say Jehovah, they say it's God, but they just use Jehovah. They always say it's God, but they just say Jehovah. And then they call themselves Jehovah Witnesses. So that's a big deal also. That's an overuse. It's almost like they're the ones that pull the strings, okay? Now, I'm not saying they're Jehovah's Witness, but it's their teachings are the ones that, like, pull the strings. Okay, so the last point, I was telling you, okay, so the focus. Now I'm going back on the focus. The focus is so strong. And that's where one part that makes the Jehovah's Witnesses strong, although they don't know it, okay? Make them strong. And that's why I was saying there's a strength, okay, behind the nothing, because it's a power, because you can't move it. And it's not, and many times it's not a good power, okay? Because I'm not going to say why, because that goes into another thing. But if you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness, you can still use what you developed, and you did develop a focus, because like what I said, when you go out in service and somebody's talking to you and they say about God, you're not going to listen. It's you keep that mindset that you have, and nobody can like sway it. For them, it's something, because they, most of the time, there's nothing out there, is what I'm trying to say. It's nothing there in their mind to connect to other things, to say, listen to this person and then let me speak. So it's not like that. It's not like open your ears for this person and then let the person speak. Okay, so I said, I was getting into focus because I was talking about the mindset. And that last topic was, I did the trigger, how it's a trigger, and we talked about that before. And then I say, it's the reason why I got that, because I was saying about the God, okay? It's nobody else's God. And I said to keep the focus. But when you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness, you can use the focus for something else. But we're still talking about the God now. Okay, it's nobody else's God. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care if you're a Christian. I don't care if you're a Catholic. I don't care what Christian religion you are or whatever. If they're talking to you, they're not, when you say God, it will not trigger. Now that's another thing too. We in the world, and I'm not using their term as the world, but I'm using our term as the world. When someone talks about God, we open and we listen, okay? So I have to say that it is just Jehovah. It's just Jehovah God. That's who they worship. I mean, that's what they will not listen. If I told my sister, or I told somebody who is Jehovah's Witness, and I told them, I go, well, God, I was praying to God, and they won't, it'll cut off. It'll cut off. So they're not open to God. And this is Jehovah versus God. So I'm getting ready to get into God, So you can see that it's a Jehovah versus God, because I don't care who, however you mention God, okay? Okay, I'm gonna give you an example, but Jesus wasn't like that. Because remember when I think Pontius Pilate, he had a dream, okay? And Jesus was still open to him. I mean, he listened. I mean, he knew everything. I mean, he knew exactly what was going to happen, but yet he listened to this Pontius Pilate, and they had a connection. So that's another thing. Because of the name Jehovah and the way they use it, they lose the connection with a lot of people. So now we're going to move over to God. We finished Jehovah. And like I said, the things I want to draw from that is it's code. It has to be used. If you do not use Jehovah, you're not going to be a Jehovah Witness, no matter what. It's a focus point. If you mention another God, they're not going to open their minds to it. Okay? So that's telling you, I don't want to, so I can actually say that it is just Jehovah. Jehovah God, but they don't say God, they say Jehovah. They started in the beginning, they might say Jehovah God in the beginning, but they'll turn to Jehovah. Jehovah this, Jehovah that, Jehovah this, Jehovah that, Jehovah this, Jehovah that, okay? And like I said, my sister said, I love my brother, but I love Jehovah more. And my other sister said, I'm not leaving Jehovah. And I remember when I was in an instance with my brother, that's in the earlier tapes, and something happened. I don't want to repeat it. And it's back in all the way in the beginning, is where I was living with my brother, because he had gotten this fellowship too. So if you want to look up that tape. And I said Jehovah. So I have evidence of using the Jehovah. And I used it, but I noticed that it wasn't God. It wasn't God. And when you're in trouble, you don't say. I mean, okay, I'm not gonna go into another area. I'm just saying, something happened, and I said Jehovah. Okay, but I know because I can see it right now, and I remember it clearly. I was not talking about God. Now we're going over to God. God, you have more freedom. I mean, you pretty much can talk to him about anything. Anything respectable, you can say God, because you have this respect for him. However, you can get really upset, okay? Because God can put you through a lot of things, and you know he's right, but you don't want to go through these things. And you'll argue with him. I mean, you have respect for him, but you argue with him and you go, oh, please, why are you doing this to me? But you know that he's right, but he's still with you and he understands you. So on this side, God, this is the God. This is God's side, and it's not a name. It has its own tense. A lot of people don't say this because, in the schools and everything, they have to teach English in this way and that way, but nobody teaches God grammar. And because if you know God, you know he has his own grammar. You don't have to say God all the time. If you're talking to him all day long, you know that you're open to him. So it's not a name, he's there with you, So that's how God is. So that just, how can I say, it minimizes this God that they're using, okay? Because they can't do that. They don't have that responsibility. They don't have that ability. Because I remember when they always said self-abuse, okay? This is personal. But they would always talk about self-abuse, masturbation. And I always felt bad because I always was doing it. And I remember when I had gotten baptized, I said, I'm not going to, self-abuse anymore, because I didn't know what the word masturbation was anyway. And I did it, and it was like, oh shit. Now, I'm sorry for saying that, but anyway, I said, oh boy, now I did it again, and I would do it again and again, and I said, when can I talk to somebody about this? Because they made me feel guilty about it, and I always pray. I didn't pray, but it's funny because I was actually praying to God at that point, because I said you can accidentally pray to God, and I would accidentally pray to God, not using His name. That's what I'm saying. I didn't even use His name. I was just there's a word, admonishing. When you admonish, sometimes you talk to God. I was like, where can I get, when can I talk to somebody about this? You know what I mean? And I didn't have the brothers or judicial meeting in mind at all. I they told me to feel guilty about it, so I really felt guilty about it. And I was like, when am I going to be able to talk to somebody? When am I going to be cleared? Because I wanted to be cleared or something. And it didn't happen. Well, after I left the Jehovah's Witness and I understood a lot of things. But so I used God as an admonishment. I can admonish, like for instance, you don't even have to say Lord. Something can happen to you and you can say, oh, please don't let this happen. So that's like an admonish. So just with this one point, their Jehovah doesn't even exist. You can't do anything like that, okay? And when I was having that problem, I never would ever say Jehovah. No way. And I remember, and I said this before, I was afraid to say Jehovah. As far as God, what I thought God was, I was afraid for Him to see me. When I figured God, whenever I would think of just God, it was like afraid. So anyway, the next point is what I'm trying to say. There's so many ways in which we can call Him. And I want to say Jesus said, Father, my Father, okay? That's another way. The Holy Spirit, I'm going to have a tape on the Holy Spirit versus the governing body. So, we can say Jesus. Um, we have so many avenues to talk to God. And a lot of people were saying, I was saying, like, how in the world can we make it with all these problems? I mean, I have a lot of problems. I see so many people with problems, but yet we know the reason why we make it is because we are open to so much communication as far as God is concerned. So much communication. Like I said, you can say Jesus, you can go to church. It is nice to go to church because you have, not just for, it's because other people are there. You see other people. And I wrote something about that too. Some people down organized religion. I don't down organized religion. Just know that people are there to help you, but they're also imperfect. No matter where you go, it's an imperfect system. So what's another? Okay, so we have so many ways of talking to Him. And so that's true. See if I can do one more point as far as God is concerned. So this Jehovah versus God, it has no comparison whatsoever. And I went over all the points for Jehovah, like Jehovah, the name, and now I'm on God. I didn't go over the points because I know that there was so much to talk about. But I do want to say, okay, as far as Jehovah is concerned, it has been used. It's kind of tricky, but you can say Jehovah. I've heard it say when people term God, but it's said totally differently. Because you can use any term for God as long as you do it the right way, okay? Because I've heard it, I've said it before, meaning just God, okay? But it's said a different way. It's said in a way that they do not say it, because I was saying in some of the songs they say it and they're talking about God, and I've heard people say it, but they don't like, it's not like a Jehovah Witness thing. It's like just something, I can't express it now, but I've heard it said before, okay? And hopefully, I don't want to go there as far as that name is concerned. The reason why I'm very sensitive about that, like I said, I've heard it and I know it can be used. And I was practicing, and I was, before this tape, and I was saying, well, how can it be said? And I said it, but it was difficult because I was using my mind, okay? But but as a Jehovah's Witness, they don't even think about that. It's not like that because they're being taught to use the name and it's being deceived. So that's as far as God is concerned, okay? And so should I go over one more point? Oh, and the God also doesn't, um, he wants you to enjoy your life. Life is so hard, it's difficult. He doesn't mind if you celebrate Christmas. Like I said, they say it's the wrong day. But the thing about it is you can only be off of it. I said this before. You can only be off a date by 365 days. If it's the wrong exact date. You understand what I'm saying? But people need that because it also helps in turning in events. Like for instance, the holidays that we have, it helps in time telling, in memories and things like that. The Jehovah's Witness, everything is together. I can't remember one special year from the next. You understand? Oh, this was a good Christmas. Oh, I remember during this Christmas we did this. Or that Christmas, oh, Thanksgiving we did this. Or I remember during Easter we did that. But God enjoys that we're enjoying ourselves because He knows that life is rough. So my next one is going to be on, should I say anything? Okay, the next one I want to be on is the Holy Spirit versus the governing body, okay? This one was very important because it shows that there's no way in the world that they're worshiping God. There's no way. The biggest point I think out of this is that they do not listen. They do not want to hear when somebody else says God. And that's another thing I can put on God part is that we communicate with each other and we say God and we know that the person is talking about God. We can feel it. If somebody says something, oh, I'm going to pray about this. And we don't overuse it. And most of the time we use it, we have how can I say, I can say like a relationship with Him because we don't have to use it all, overuse it because He knows where we stopped and He knows where we're going to continue. So that's it for Jehovah versus God. And look forward for my next one. I hope everybody's doing good. So far it's a good year, new year, but it's only like a week or so. I hope everybody's having a great time. And see you next time.